Welcome back to Horrifically Well Read, Bled, and Said. Today we are welcoming Amber Reu to the pod. She is going to talk with us everything Josh Malerman, especially the new book Watching Evil Dead, as well as give us some insight into her awesome book group Novel Nightmares. When we started this podcast and decided who we were going to have on, you were definitely one of the first names that we thought
Yep,
of.
for sure.
I am so honored. Like, that makes my whole day. Actually, I'm going to take that back. My whole life is made by that.
So if you don't know, Amber Reu is the founder of Novel Nightmares Book Club, which I have been a part of for a very long time and enjoyed. Would you like to kind of give us a rundown of what you do there and why people should join?
Yes, I'd love to. So, Novel Nightmares is a virtual horror book club. We meet about once a month. TBD if that will continue next year. That's my hope, but we will always see. And it's completely virtual. The goal is for everyone to join. So, I really want it to make horror accessible for everyone, not just, your normal genre reader. So I select the titles. They're all books that I've read and I've enjoyed. And then once a month, we all meet on Zoom and the author of the book joins us. And for the first half of the meeting, it's kind of a conversation between the author and me. And then the second half of the meeting, I open it up to members to ask questions. It's been really great and I think people enjoy it. But it's been really awesome to see kind of like the same faces coming every month and then we'll have new people. It's actually been really good for me because it keeps me on track with my reading too. And so I hope that people are kind of, exploring new titles through it as well.
I really love how part of your mission was to make horror accessible. That to me feels like you're a perfect first guest considering for me, I'm often like an introvert. I'm at that age, like I'm an extroverted introvert, but I'm also at that age where if plans are broken, it's okay. I love that your setup actually allows for people to join over Zoom and, have the opportunity to join, but you're not actually having to go out to some place or someone's house. So I feel like it's kind of the best of both worlds. How are people discovering, joining for these, or is it more word of mouth, or, have you grown like a little bit more about how people are finding you, and were they traditional horror readers?
That's a great question. So I am actually curious that myself. So if anyone's listening and you've joined Novel Nightmares, let me know how you found out about the club because I don't know. I mean, admittedly, like I am very annoying on social media. So I'm sure that's like picking up some people. I think it's probably a little bit of word of mouth. I think the majority of our members probably that is like their go-to genre is horror. I think we do have some outliers. Like my mom joins every meeting and like she's not just joining because she's my mom. Like trust me, like I do a bunch of like crazy things that she would not be a part of just because I'm doing. She's like, I love this book. And so I think that we do have some members that, they are kind of stepping outside their bounds. I will say that I think yeah, I do too. I think the thing that I'm hoping that the book club is doing a bit more is even if you are consistently reading horror, maybe helping people see those books in a different light.
Mm.
And like do a deeper dive with that book because I feel like so often, especially if you read a lot, like you can get lost in it and maybe not give that book the attention that it deserves. And so like a lot of the times when I'm coming up with questions for meetings, like I'm like, what is going to be one, like worth the author's time to come on because they're so busy and they're so generous with their time. But then two, like what do our members want to learn? Because like as a reader myself, like I don't want to go to an event and like hear you ask the most boring questions that I've heard 1,000
Right.
times. And so I
Right.
think like my challenge as a host is always like, what can I ask that people are going to be interested in hearing and the author is going to be interested in answering?
That's really just the added scope here is you having the author on. And I feel like reading for years has been such a solitary activity.
Yeah.
And to be able to have community now, as I feel like not just through social community of sharing things, but then having it what you're doing, it does allow you to deeper dive or see a perspective or, sometimes when Adam and I talk, I'm like, where was that in the book? Oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's easy enough, but there's times where it's just, I really feel like I want to understand a little bit more and discuss about your books. And I'm like, there's a need for what you're doing, Amber, because clearly people want to be talking about it. They want to understand it more. And they want to dive deeper. And we just need to get them connected with you.
I appreciate that. No, and I think you said like you're an extroverted introvert. I'm the same way. Like I'm not good in big crowds. I definitely like want my like smaller group of people. But I'm good virtually. I mean, I admittedly I get very nervous before each meeting of Novel Nightmares. And so I really like want people to know that like this is like the chillest environment that you can come into. Like I don't care if you're on camera. I don't care if you ever say a word. Like I hope you feel comfortable too, but if you don't, like, hey, I see you, like, I appreciate you coming. I just want it to be the most welcoming environment that it can be. And so for people who are like, I've tried book club, it's not my thing, or I'm really shy, like, come listen in. Like, there's no judgment from me if you don't say a peep, if you have your camera. Like, I just want you there and enjoying it. And then also, like, if you are shy and want to talk about it, like, my DMs are always open for people. Like, I say that and I really mean it. Like, if you want to talk, like, let's talk one on one. I'm happy to do that with people.
And even in the book clubs, one of the things that I love is, there's the chat there too. So if you're
Yeah.
too shy to, or it's just not your thing to speak out loud that way, you can put it in the chat. So
Well, what's really nice too, Amber, is like I know Adam and I have gone to several speaker events of authors at some local bookstores, and your platform right now, it's free and you get this intimate exposure to the author and small group of people. It just sounds really wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's completely free to join. Even the book club site, you don't have to pay to be a member. It's everything's kind of taken care of for you. I just want people to be able to read the book and have access to the authors that come on.
yeah, and you've had like the biggest names in horror on your book club. So Stephen
Let's hear
Graham
it.
Jones, Rachel Harrison, Grady Hendrix, Nat Cassidy's doing a double feature this month with you. And Nat Cassidy also made a huge point at the end of the talk with Nestlings. He said at the end, he was like, these were fantastic questions. And he gets asked deep questions because his books go to places. And for him to say that, I think that was really awesome. So congratulations for that. How long would you have considered yourself to be either a horror fan or specifically a horror reader?
So this is like going to be a complicated answer. Maybe you might be like, this is not complicated at all. So I didn't realize for the longest time that I was reading horror. I grew up reading Goosebumps and Bunnicula and like like the little children, like horror books, but I didn't know they were horror. Like I just like to read. Like I would read Goosebumps and then I would read American Girls, and I never really considered them genres. I just knew that that's like what I like to read. And then I would read like Fear Street and like point horror and those kind of books in late elementary and middle school. And then in high school, I stopped really reading it and started reading more like classics. And I would go to scary movies sometimes with my friends, but like I'm not a big scary movie person. It really freaks me out and I get really in my head about it.
It's so wild that we have that in common.
Yeah. And then I guess like I think it was so Grady Hendrix's final girl support group had just come out.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I love this book. And then I was talking to one of my friends and I was like, wait, I think I read a lot of horror and I just never realized it. So I guess like within the last 5 years, I've really started calling myself a horror reader. But I kind of hate saying that. Like I kind of just say like I read, and like if people are like, what do you like to read? I'll tell them. But I don't like to put myself in a box because it's like to me, horror can be anything. And like, who am I to define it? Like, obviously, there's some books that like they're being pitched to you as horror, but then there's others that like you could make an argument that they are.
Yeah, and that's like the main discussion that we're having on here, as it gets further along here, because I think of even Grady Hendrix, he has been classified, and I think he considers himself and wants to be classified as a horror writer. But, and it was a big sort of, I don't want to say argument, but discussion about whether or not Witchcraft for Wayward Girls was a horror novel. I firmly believe it is, but not in the ways that I think most people say, oh, this is a horror novel, why they consider it to be one. And I think that that's really interesting that you say, I want to be defined as a reader. And if you ask me what I read, yes, a lot of the answers that I'll give you
awesome.
are horror books, but that doesn't mean that that's all that I read, or that the books that aren't horror books aren't horrific.
So Amber, you
Right.
like the wine, not the label, as to paraphrase David from Schitt's Creek.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think too, like the other side of that is like I worry I mean, I hate this word, but like a book reviewer or influencer, like I don't want to people to think they can't pick up a book because they don't normally read horror. And there's so many horror books that fit into different genres. Like Daniel Krause's Angel Down is coming out in a few months, or I guess this month actually,
Yeah.
or July 29th. I'm not sure when this is coming out, but like that certainly is a horror book, but it can be historical fiction. It could be lit fic. And so I'm careful when I'm pitching books to people, especially if I know they're not a horror reader, to be like, it's a horror book and you should read it. To like really
Yeah.
try to draw them like, you'll like this because of XYZ. And then at the end, I'll be like,
Yeah.
guess what? You read a horror book. Like, way to go. It wasn't that bad, was it? Like, it wasn't that scary. And then, I
Yeah. You
mean, I
have to
think,
like adapt your sales pitch to get them to read it. It's like
yeah,
to the horror reader, it's like, oh, this is so gross, or you're going to love this part. And then, yeah, you're right though, because it's like you feel so compelled to be like, this is so good, it needs to be read, but we have to tease it in a different way to those non-classified horror readers.
yeah. When I've talked to Grady about this a lot, because he has paperbacks from hell with him and Will Erickson. And I think a lot of people, especially like that are a bit older, think of horror as like these pulpy, like paperbacks from the 70s that are all about like sex and torture and like they're not very well written. Like the genre isn't that way anymore. I mean, if that's what you're into, like you can find it, or you can read the old stuff from the 70s. That's not really like what most people are reading nowadays. And not to knock it if you like it, more power to you if that's what you want to read. But I think that people have it in their minds that like that's all that horror is, and that's just not the case anymore.
It isn't. And it's just like, when do you think that started to shift? Because I think that was a big part of how this got created. It is exactly what you just described, plus the concept that horror was the same thing as horror films. And it's changed immensely. And I'm curious as to when it happened. Cause like I've been alive and I've been reading, but like, when did it shift?
So my theory on this is that you had the big paperback boom and they were just pumping out like anything that they could write. Like they were just throwing horror on it. Like it would be sci-fi and they'd be like, this is horror. Put a sick cover on it and like we'll pitch it as that. I think this is my theory. I'm not an expert, but I think that when that craze died down, it kind of allowed publishers to step back and like really refocus on like, okay, we're going to put horror books out, but like let's put out quality books because we're not having to like keep up with this mad craze.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I was reading those 80s and 90s paperbacks, and I was going to the store looking for horror, and it was hard to find anything that wasn't that. So
Yeah.
now I'm going back and finding that there were all of these writers during that time period, particularly female writers,
Yes.
that
Mhm.
were writing horror very similar to what we're reading today, but it was not marketed and it was not popular. So you have to really look for it. It's kind of switched where we're more interested in the emotions, the human condition, and all that kind of stuff in horror. And it's making people realize that the genre is so much more than we ever gave it credit for.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that day you went to the bookstore. It was a used one and you found like 5 or 6 books from 1990s
Mm-hmm.
female writers, and you like love them.
It is remarkable to see the depth and the emotion and just the beautiful writing that was in these books.
I think that's a good point too, is like there were so many good authors though that did put books out back then. I think the issue is that they just did so many books that they kind of got lost in the craze. And so I think like if people want to read older horror, Valancourt's like a great resource for that too, for people who are looking for like well thought out, like really good horror that's just harder to get a hold of because of when it came out. And a lot of the books that they're putting out are by women, but they're phenomenal. I'm thankful for someone like Valancourt for doing the hard work for everyone and going through these horror titles and putting them back out. But you can really find some great horror from that period. You just have to search for it a little bit and wade through some not so great.
Is it possible to have reverse FOMO? Like if you're missing out on what was written years ago and feeling like it's out there, something great? Because that's kind of what that feels like to me is, there's so many good things on the table, but if I wasn't reading it at that time, what am I missing?
Yeah, I think that, look, my tip on this is always to like ask the people who like those books. So like I've reached out to the Valancourt guys before and said, hey, I really loved Elizabeth by Ken Greenhall writing as Jessica Hamilton. Like what is going to kind of fill that void? And then also like, I feel like people forget about authors' backlogs a lot. Like if you like an author, like go read their backlog. And I
Yeah.
think that so many times as a reader, we focus on new releases. Go back in and like start from the beginning and read what you missed.
Yeah, because I think of someone even like Malfi, where he's been writing
Mhm.
books since the mid 90s. It's like these people have 30, 40 books, and we think of only maybe the last 5 or 6 as existing almost.
Well, I know we're going to get into some books by Josh Malerman here, but his Watching Evil Dead, he's talked about in there that he had written, I think it was like 12 or 13 books before Bird Box was selected. And throughout the conversation, he's like, I don't necessarily think that was my best book either. Like, I wrote so many other good things. It just happened to be the one that got picked up. So I think that ties right in with your go to the backlog, because potentially the author thinks some of the other works were even better, but it's just not what media marketing wise got picked up.
Yeah. And I think for Malerman in particular, like there's so many books in his backlog that people just haven't discovered yet. And I'm like, they're just waiting for you. And I think the good thing about Malerman, and there's other authors like this, I think Stephen Graham Jones is like this too, is that I think each of their books, like, you're reading a Josh Malerman book, but they all read so differently that you can really like, it doesn't feel like you're just reading 10 Josh Malerman books in a row. I mean, he's just that strong of a writer that you feel like each time you're kind of transported into, I mean, obviously it's a different world because it's a different book, but the style is just so different that it really does feel like you're picking up like a brand new author sometimes. And I think that's just a testament to how strong of a writer Josh is.
Exactly. And so that's a great segue into, we kind of wanted to talk about specifically the book that Malerman has coming out in September, and then the book that just came out in paperback. It's got a film being made out of it. It was probably one of, if not the biggest horror novel of last year, which is, of course, Incidents Around the House. So I wanted to ask you first, I know that Incidents Around the House was, I don't know if you consider it your favorite book or just a book that had this just incredible impact on you. What was it like for you first opening that book? Did you know it was going to connect the way that it did? And then sort of just your experience with it.
So I didn't know how it was going to impact me when I first read it. I knew I was excited about it because it always feels like a really big honor to get any kind of review copy from any author, but especially from a bigger author like Josh. So I got it on, I think, like a Friday night. I was approved. And I sat down and I read it all in a night. And when I finished it, I was like, this is one of the most terrifying books that I've ever read. And I kind of had a feeling like it's going to be hard to top this. I was right. Like, I was in a book slump or like a reading slump for weeks after that. It was like nothing else I picked up held a flame to it. And then I kind of just kept coming back to it. And I reread like some, but I don't reread as much as I've reread Incidents. And probably on like my third reread, I was like, okay, this book means something really special to me. And since then, like, I've kind of like kept coming back to it. Like, if I'm just not having a good reading experience with something, I'll just pick up Incidents. I just think I don't know, it's just like very effective at being scary. And I don't know why. I think maybe it's the POV, but something about that book, it really freaks me out.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask about. I think that, we've talked a lot about different types of horror a little bit here, but Incidents is horror with a capital H. This is a horror novel, at least on the outside, maybe in your initial read of it. Like, it begins and it is scary as hell. Like, I don't care who you are. Like, if you come to me and you're like, oh, it wasn't that scary, I don't believe you. Like, as a person that's read a lot of scary books, I would say the first 100 pages of this book are the scariest 100 pages of any book that's ever been written.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I agree with that.
yeah, I'll tell you. And so we talked about it a lot in the first episode, which you'll see, but Rebecca was not a fan of horror, and especially not a fan of horror films, and especially not of horror films that involve any kind of demonic presence. And so after I finished this book, I just couldn't help it. I was like, you have to read this. This book is amazing. It's so good. You have to read it right now. And you got how long?
And at this point, I'm like, I'm not reading that much horror.
Yeah.
So it's one of the first books you've asked me to read.
Right.
Now, let me just preface this by saying, like, horror films in the past, anything to do with we saw The Exorcism of Emily Rose when we first got together, and I would wake up in the middle of the night to have to pee, and I would have to wake you up to take me to the bathroom, especially if it was like anywhere between like 2 and 4 o'clock. Like, I could not get it out of my brain. Like, it was probably a decade till I could not think about it. Right.
And
so Adam's like, so I asked him, now you hold on. I asked him, I'm like, okay, so there's like nothing in this. And I'm like, how I feel about this.
It's nothing like that.
Yes. He's like, and so I'm I'm like you right now, Amber. I'm chugging through this thing. Like I'm devouring it. I probably am like in like the first
good
like 100
half.
pages,
Yeah.
like in like an hour. Like I'm
Yep.
just going. The suspense and everything is fantastic. I'm like, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden it gets to a scene like this and I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, I stop and I'm like maybe page 132, 160, something like that. Right. And I'm like, Adam, this book's having like a seance or like an exorcism. And he's like, no, it's
And I was
not.
like, yeah.
No,
but
you
it's
weren't.
not
You
like-
said, no, it's not. And I'm like, it literally says we need to perform an exorcism. And you're like, I just didn't see it like that. It just really felt, and I was like, I had to pause for like a good 30 minutes because I was so mad at you. And then I was like, you know what? This book is so good. I've already disinvested. I'm finishing it. I was like, but you know what? Giddy up for the next 10 years that I can't sleep again. And you're going to have to take me to the bathroom again because,
in the bathroom's not a safe place in that book.
now enough of that. And, but honestly, so satisfying, so good. You know, after I made it through and it was so good, I was like, and thank God I never got scared. Like, you know, later on, it did not haunt me like that movie did. But I'm so glad I read it because it is such an excellent book. I mean, it is riveting, you know, and just the play on everything and the backgrounds to what is actually happening and major suspense. I think it deserved all the hype that it got.
So I'm going to kind of talk about three things specifically.
So I just have a quick question though. So did you know these things and you were just like, too bad, I need you to read it. And you're like, it's worth it for her to be mad at me. Or did you really not think it was those things?
So I want to talk about three things about this book specifically. And it's actually, interestingly enough, female characters that I want to talk about. So the first one, I think, and why I think initially a lot of people were kind of pointing towards this book as being special. And it's very similar to sort of like what's happening right now with Angel Down for Daniel Kraus is the actual style of the way that the book is written. We are in the head and have the perspective of a child where something very unchildlike is happening around them. What do you think, you know, knowing a little bit more about maybe the process of how this was written and then also your own take as to it, why do you think that choice was made to do that? And then two, why do you think that gives it so much power?
I think that for some reason, Josh just always had it in his head that this would be told from the point of view of a child. What made him get that idea? I'm not sure, but I'm very grateful that he did because I do think that that's half the reason that this book is so effective. And I think it's going to be a scary book regardless because the concept that this is some entity that you can't escape. It follows them wherever it's going. Mild spoilers, for instance, around the house if you haven't read it by now. But I think that having a child walk you through this entity that's like haunting her, it's terrifying. And she's so nonchalant about it. And I think that that's unnerving because Bella never really seems afraid until her parents really start seeming afraid. She seems afraid. She doesn't seem as afraid as I would have been as 8 years old.
which makes me feel like, how long has this been your friend, this
Right.
entity? Because it's so normal to you.
I think there's
Right.
also that aspect of a child when a child falls or hurts themselves, they don't cry until you look at them and show
Yes.
them that they're supposed to be in pain or
Yep.
hurt. And I think that Malerman really nails that. So I think that's something that Malerman really nailed, that idea of a child that has been hurt or is in a situation that they don't realize is either unsafe or strange. And it's only once the parents start to react very strongly that she reacts very strongly. I think that also part of it is that we're bringing an adult perspective to what we're reading. And I think that when certain things happen, we realize this is really freaking scary and she doesn't. And I think some of the power in it actually is in those moments where what we are experiencing is very different than what Bella realizes she's experiencing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I agree with that. I think that's also a little bit loosely tied, and you might have a question on this, but so if you do, you can shut me up. But I think that that's a little bit of like why sometimes I was frustrated with people's response to this book because people are like, oh, like the mom is doing this, and like that's not what I would do. Okay, well, I don't think you've ever been haunted by a demon entity, so like, how would you know how you would respond in that situation? You know? Like you can say you think you would respond a certain way, but there's no way to know.
I think I would respond very calmly. I'm pretty sure.
Right.
I don't know that I would make good decisions. I feel like I would be doing everything. And even like at one point, like their friends are like, you got to get the hell out of here. Like
Yeah,
I could see myself saying that too. Like, I love you and you're our good friends, but you got to get the hell out of here.
And the
you
fact
gotta
is, from the
go.
outside, they make the decisions that you always tell horror movie characters to make, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They leave, they go to a friend's house, they go to the mom's house, all this thing, and it does not matter what they try to do to get away from it. So I think that was a great like switch on sort of what you expect to happen too.
I agree. Yeah, I think so too.
But so Bella, her perspective is amazing in that. So I want to move on to, like you said, the mother Ursula, the hatred that she
God.
got from readers. And I'm guessing that a lot of this comes from the fact that she acts like she deserves what she wants, and that a woman doing that offends readers for some reason. And I think that's where a lot of her, hatred comes from. What do you think?
I think that that's right. I think, and this is something I talked to Josh about when he came on book club for this book, because I am a big Ursula sympathizer. I'm Ursula's biggest fan, which doesn't win me a lot of favor with people. Look, I think people expect mothers in books to either be demons themselves or evil or Susie homemakers. And Ursula is just not evil. And she's also just not a Susie homemaker. I mean, I don't think this is like expressly said anywhere in the book, but it kind of seems like she's either the breadwinner in that house or has a like relatively well paying job that she needs to go to, and she's just not at the moment thrilled with being a mom. And I think that that's like a realistic perspective for a lot of women that doesn't get talked about in fiction. And I think to be written by a male, I mean, I think she's pretty realistic, and I think that readers just have a hard time grappling with that. I was kind of surprised at like the hate Ursula was getting, especially from other women, because I think that like it downplays people's experiences that are unsure or about being a mom or are moms and sometimes just aren't thrilled about it. And I think it like, look, it's a book, like I know it's not real, but like as readers we connect with these characters. And so when you see hate for a character like Ursula, who's really not doing anything that's like warranting, I don't think this hate, it's kind of like unnerving a little bit. And I think it honestly, and I told Josh this offline, but I feel like it's a little sexist at times, the way
Yep.
people talked about Ursula, because like what the hell is Russ doing in this book? That's so
Exactly.
noble, you know?
Yeah. So, a couple things that I want to touch on for that. I think your answer is brilliant. I was always told that, and again, this is regardless of politics, but I was always told that a woman president would never be elected because women will vote for men and men will vote for men, but women will always go against other women. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I was told that by my ninth grade social studies teacher, where like women are hypercritical of other women, which is surprising. And then in the criminal justice aspect, we expect mothers to truly be mothers. And so we see such few women come through the criminal justice system that when we do see them, we're so surprised and so aghast that they wouldn't be motherly that the law throws the book at them. Like they get much harder sentencing. And I feel like even through watching, like I like this one family that I watch on TikTok, and it's like in the comments, it's like, you're such a good mom. You're such a good mom. And I'm like, this is literally highlight snippets of the things they're doing. Like you don't know about the rest of the house. Like you don't know the rest of the day or anything. It's just, but yeah, there is such a high expectation. And I love, being a woman myself with children and in the corporate world, it's like to women that stayed home and were homemakers, like I love that they could do that. My mother was one, my sister-in-laws are ones. Like that's awesome. For me, I have been the breadwinner and I was the person that wanted a corporate life too and to be a mom. And I think it is like more of a juggling act, but you do. I think you get a lot more kind of just criticism, or there's a lot more expectation, right? So I didn't think she was doing anything wrong either. Like, and it isn't always thrilling. If people are honest, parenting is hard work. I think you and I, Amber, and like you and I and Katrina were talking about this at
Yeah.
StokerCon. And it's okay if you don't want to have kids, and it's okay if you do want to have kids. And there's highs and lows, just like with marriage. There's highs and lows, friendships, whatever. So to think that you don't go through periods like this as a parent is just unrealistic, and sounds to me like she was judged very harshly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the other part, and Josh has said this, and I agree with it, was that like maybe Ursula's not the best mom sometimes to an 8-year-old, but that's not to say she won't be like the best mom to a 16-year-old, you know? And so to just kind of write her off is it's kind of frustrating. And same with Russ. Like maybe, yeah, I'm sure Russ is a fun dad to an 8-year-old, but like, will he be able to be there for a 13-year-old? Like, who knows?
I feel like I have more issues with Russ.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I do too.
conversely, like, yeah. it's kind of the same thing because we see this all the time. Oh, and he helped take care of the kids, or he watched the kids while I went to dinner. It's like, there's
It's
this
his
just
kid.
absolute
They are your
tiny
children. You're not babysitting your own children.
yeah, the standard for being a good dad is acknowledging there's a child in the same room as you. You know what I mean? Like it's so low. And for him, it's like he makes pretty terrible decisions the whole book. And, a lot of the problems that he has that you're noticing and kind of getting the conversations and side conversations for stuff with, the marriage, it's like he is not the victim here. He, inaction is action as well. And he definitely has a lot of the reason why their relationship is where it is. And the fact is that we just happen to come across their relationship at this moment. And this is when this is happening. Anyone that's been married for an extended period of time knows that we've all had periods of our relationships that are high, low, and that kind of thing. And I think that he just nails the feeling of a hard moment during a marriage so well that it made readers uncomfortable and look in the mirror a little too hard.
I think that's a fantastic thing to say, that making them too uncomfortable. And I know we're not speaking about this book, but I'm speaking about the V.E. Schwab's Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. Excellently written, deeply uncomfortable. It made me so uncomfortable. I didn't enjoy reading it. I was like, I don't want to read it again. But what she did was, it's a book about vampires, and it really focuses on the length of the mortality or immortality. I'm sorry. And it was so uncomfortable and unpleasant to sit with that I found myself disliking the book. And so I can easily see how, because an author does such a good job making you feel miserable, that all of a sudden you're like, it's just, we forget the art of it and really end up looking at like, this character's messed up, or we don't know all these other things. So I think, bringing it back to why Amber does these kind of books and haven't discussed. I mean, I love that we're having these connections and conversations right now, because this is more than I've thought about the book. Like initially, I really enjoyed it, but I wasn't going down into these aspects.
When I think, and I'm going to say this a lot because like I feel like I am like Josh's biggest fan sometimes. But I do think that that's like a testament to Josh's writing, that a book about, from the point of view of an 8-year-old, is like we can talk about it for hours. It's that good, but also like so much to pull from. And especially with Ursula, like I would read a book all about Ursula if we can get Josh to write that, because I want to know like what's her backstory, like what's she up to before all of this happens. I don't know. I don't dislike Russ either, but I don't think it's fair how much hate Ursula has gotten since this book came out.
There's a purposely aloof quality to Russ that I think
Russ seems childlike to me himself.
Yeah, me too.
yeah, and I think
Like, not that he's a small child, but just like, he's not too much more mature than 18 or 19, 20 years old. And
Yeah.
he's just like, I don't want to be a total authoritarian or anything. He's just like, I'm a dad.
Russ seems like he would tell me to like calm down in a fight. Like,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
like, have you tried just not being anxious?
I think
Calm
there's
down.
definitely the feeling in this book that if someone's going to save them, it's Ursula. It is not Russ.
Yeah, that was my takeaway too.
So that takes us to the final character that I really wanted to talk about in this book, and that's Other Mommy. I think that she is an all-time horror, I guess, villain, if you want to call her that, because, up until the very end, it's kind of difficult, one, to kind of put a word on what her actual motivation is. Sort of the way the book is set up, you kind of question what she really is in the first place the entire time. But the one thing you know is that she is fucking terrifying from the very moment that you are introduced to her. So what do you think about Other Mommy?
I want to know what Other Mommy does after incidents around the house. Like who is she haunting after incidents? I think there's a few things about incidents I think that makes it really scary. I think the big thing to me is that you can't escape Other Mommy. The other part of it that makes, like, I guess Other Mommy terrifying, is that this could have happened to any family. It could have happened. It happened to Bella and Russ and Ursula. It could have been anyone. And I think, like, I kind of had that feeling when I was reading it, and that's something that Josh has talked about. And knowing that just makes that book so much more unnerving, because it's like no one's family is safe from this demon entity thing that wants to like take your body over. And I like the fact that you can't outrun it, you can't hide from it, and it could just happen to you. It's like it's horrifying.
Yeah, and the fact that literally nowhere you go is safe. You can't sit on the toilet. I think that's really wonderful. And I think that this is a book that as the movie comes out will get even more popular. She might not make it out of the theater, to be perfectly honest. Maybe I won't have her go see that. She's an older lady now.
One more scary thing to say about incidents before we move on to watching Evil Dead. So the part of that book that freaks me out, other than the bathroom scene, is when Bella is at Grandma Ruth's and the dog is licking her face. That is not that dog licking her face.
Yeah. Man, that's so good. So there's a movie in the late '90s that it's a anthology movie that was direct to video, and it follows this girl that whenever she's scared, her dog sleeps on the ground next to her, and she puts her hand down and lets the dog
Yeah.
lick her finger. And so the whole time you also see that there's this creepy man following and filming her and stalking her. And then one night it's thunderstorming and she goes down and the dog's licking her hands and the lightning strikes and she sees that trigger alert. Her dog is hung in her bathroom and on the mirror it says people can lick too.
No.
So yeah, whenever that scene just brought that back in my mind so hard. He did that so well.
Yeah, that so I didn't see that, but that used to be like one of those like urban legend stories that like kids would tell each other, in like the 90s, and that still to this day haunts me. And so when I read Incident, I was like, this is terrifying.
Yeah, something about like I don't know. It's even worse than when you think it's your parent when it's your pet because your pet's like your safe place
Yeah.
and it's like not even that. So great way to end incidents discussion.
So watching Evil Dead.
Yeah. So watching Evil Dead, obviously, besides its title, this is not a horror novel. This is a nonfiction book, essentially about
Creativity.
creativity. Josh Malerman is not just a fantastic writer, he's the lead singer of a successful band. Like there's a lot of creativity going on. Some of the things that he talks about in this book, are specific to writers, but are so also just in general, anyone that wants to create, and creativity can mean so many different things. I think the first thing that really struck me in this book was he takes it to being in writing and reading shape is the way that he describes it, but really just keeping yourself in creative shape is such an interesting idea. Did that resonate with you as well?
It did. And I agree with that. I think one of the examples he gives is like if you try to read like a shorter book, it's hard. Like if you can't read a long book. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I've talked about this with Josh about classics. So when you're in high school and you're in college, you read a lot of classics, and then I stopped reading them when I got out of college. And then I recently started rereading them, and I'm like, this is tough. You've got to work your brain back up to that level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he says, God, if you haven't been reading for a long time, even a novella, so like under 200 pages, can look daunting. But if you're in reading shape all the time, then you're like, bring on the series. And I just feel like that's so accurate. And I wanted to say that as someone that's neurodivergent, it was really hard for me years ago to be able to like focus, to even sit down, to not reread the same sentence again and again. And sometimes I feel like I have to even though I've read over 100 some books already this year, I have to play tricks with myself to be like, just get to page 25. Let's just get to page 50. And I read every single day, but it's like making myself go to the gym. I'm really happy once I've done it and I'm doing it. So when he reaches in and talks about the shape, it just made me feel, wow, isn't that so true? And whether that's writing shape, painting, sketching, starting a business, whatever it is, it's just whatever you want to do well, you need to do it every day.
Yeah, definitely. I think it applies, like you said, to basically everything you're doing every day. To just keep doing it, and the other part of that too is it keeps you used to doing it, but also if you're doing it consistently, you're only going to get better. So you're going to be a stronger reader, a writer, a painter, singer, whatever you're doing. You're just going to keep growing, or you're just going to grow as a person.
I felt like I had no idea what this is going to be about. So, I mean, I was like watching Evil Dead, like the creative artist, like, huh? And so basically what he does in this book is he sets up that he and his girlfriend, they're going to watch Evil Dead for the first time, one of his most beloved movies. She's not seen it. They're going to her cousin Kinnicky's house and his girlfriend Rose is over there. And so Malerman is like interweaving his thoughts the whole night of as he's watching the greatest, most creative movie ever, as Bird Box is simultaneously being picked up for publication. And he's having thoughts on like, what does an author deserve? You know, why did this get selected here? And Kanicki's asking a lot of different questions about this. And he's going through Sam Raimi's process, who directed Evil Dead. But I found it to be such a fantastic book for if you've ever even thought about writing, like his coaching through this and the way he viewed things, like he put me at ease for really anything I wanted to try or I wanted to do. It was just like, do it because you're supposed to, like, do it because it's the joy of doing it. And so, you know, he goes through a lot on like, what does success mean? And I think that it's wonderful because he's like, the success is that you did it. You did the thing that you've always wanted to do. He's like, you usually put your goals and your dreams in a place called One Day. And if you're lucky enough, your car stops in one day and it's here, it's arrived. Go do the thing. And the joy of doing the thing that you've always wanted to do or doing it, whether it gets picked up for publication or not, there's so much joy in that. It was like, what if there's classics out there? What if there's like a brilliant book that because you postponed it and you never did it? It was so good. And being a creative person myself and wanting to always try a lot of things, you know, I've had several good ideas over the years and I've not acted on them. And then someone else has done that for small business and other things. And I just felt like he encourages anyone for whatever medium they're at. It's like, stop waiting. You can do this. It does not need to be about perfection or the 4 V's that he goes through of like, and he's like, if you make sure you're not thinking about vindication, victory, validation, or vengeance, then you're going to have a great time writing. You're going to feel good and it will be a success.
I've said this a lot when I've been talking about this book online, that it feels like a conversation with Josh. I don't want people to pick this up and think that it's like Josh preaching at you for 207 pages. This feels like you're like having a drink with Josh and he's telling you about this one night and he's giving you life advice. I like Allison and Josh are the nicest people in the world. Like they're the most encouraging, creative to like you'll ever meet. And I think that that comes through in this book. And I think that's honestly what makes watching Evil Dead so special is that like you can feel that creativity and warmth come through the book. And it's honestly, it's kind of unlike anything I've read before. I've read writing books before and creativity books before, and not always do they feel like preachy, but often it does feel like someone teaching you something. And I feel like with watching Evil Dead, it just feels like someone's like giving you some life advice. And,
Yes.
you know, you can take it or leave it. Like Josh isn't going to push it on you, but you can like trust what he's saying and it just feels good to read. I've read it
It
several
really
times.
does.
It just makes me
It's
feel
like a nice
good.
little warm hug, right? Like a warm
Yeah.
whiskey drink. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just how he had the idea to weave this in and out as like you're deep in the conversation with everybody in the room watching the show and the next thing you're into these things and how he's interspersed it's so beautifully woven together. It is unlike anything I've ever read before. And it, you know, if you're reading a coaching book for business or anything else where you think like I'm just going to be, as you said, like talked at or, you know, have it like pushed down your throat or whatever. It's not. It's like, here's how I've done it. Here's how I've kept it really casual and been really successful. And it's like, if you look at these things, you can have a good time doing it too.
It's
Yeah.
like a book that accidentally changes your life.
I felt really good about it too. I feel that way. It felt like I was just like, oh my God, I can do things. I should do these things. I should really do them.
I know. I felt the same way. Like when I first read it, I was like, "Oh my God." Like I cried a little bit and I was like, I love this so much. I sent Josh like a freaking novel myself about like this is just like the greatest thing I've ever read. I'm just excited for people to dive into it because I do think that something about it unlocks a little bit of creativity in you. Like even if you don't think you're a creative, like you'll want to go make something
Yeah.
after reading this book.
Yes. You're like, you know what? If you ever just thought that you know, how many readers out here have ever thought, you know what if I could be a writer? What if I could give my hand a try at this? Malerman says, not only can you probably should, because you should trust yourself to know that if you find yourself thinking about it, then you should do it. Like there's
Yeah.
really no concept of a bad book or a bad idea.
I think that's right. And if you think about someone like Josh, who has written so much, I'm sure he's had ideas where he's been like, I don't know how this one's going to pan out, but like, let's do it anyway. And I'm curious if any of those ideas have turned into books that he's put out and been published. But I think it's just like not being afraid to take the risk. Because like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You wasted a few hours writing. It's not really wasted. Like, you're going to be fine. It'll all work out.
Within the first 50 pages, I probably could have highlighted every page or every sentence because there were so many parts in there. Like the first thing he says is like, if you've never known language before and you ask like, what is this? And they say, it's a fork. He's like, then it's yours. You know it. It's your word. You can use it. It's like, you don't go around comparing yourself to people to say, when did you learn the word fork? I shouldn't use the word fork because you learned it before me. And you're like, man, if you look at it in that perspective of, we say, well, they've been writing longer than me, or they've done this longer than me. They've played longer than me. The self-doubt creeps in. And then at some point in the book, he juxtaposes how he's on stage for Bird Box with another writer. And he said that author spent 10 years writing like one massive tome that's phenomenal. Whereas Josh in the last 10 years has written at this point like 13, 14. Neither one of them is better than the other. And I feel like that's almost like the biggest takeaway of the book is he really gets into the center of your self-doubt. He even says, what does that even mean, imposter syndrome? I don't even know what that means. And it makes you think maybe a lot of the things that we've conditioned by society to stop you from doing these things. It's like, yeah, I would never go against someone that's been using the word fork. So why am I saying I can't write either? Why can't I try it right now?
I think that the other key to that too is like you as a person have such a different experience than anyone else that is going to write something. I haven't lived your life. I haven't lived Adam's life. And so we could each write the same story and we're going to come to it a different way because our own experiences are going to shade it. And so I think the imposter syndrome thing is interesting because it's so easy to feel like you're an imposter or feel like you're like putting on a role. But really, who's to say that anyone else is doing a better job than you? Everyone brings like their own unique things to the table. And I feel like that's something I have struggled with. And after I read this book, I was on such a high for the week. I was like, I can do anything.
And that ties us full circle back to, the whole point of why we're doing this podcast, which is to expand people's perceptions of not just what they should read, but what they can do and what's out there. And I think that through this book and sort of sparking creativity in everyone and telling them that, no matter what that story is that they have in them, they're going to be changed at the end of it. It's the same way for books where, you're never going to be a governess in the 1800s, but when you read this book you feel like you are, or you understand that experience a little bit now. And the same for just really any other book that you might read. And that's why it's so important to for with our mission of this is to find people that don't read horror to understand that their horror is for everyone, and they might have been reading horror the whole time, but then also for horror readers to kind of look outside their sometimes small
comfort zone
of authors
or
and
circle of
places
influence
where they're willing to read and understand that this book that may be about something that they think, oh, that's not for me, that it really is, that the same themes, the same things are there, but really at the end of it, it's about learning, it's about empathy, it's about changing your perspective to widen it and become a better person at the end of it. And I think that when I first finished this book and talked to you about it, that was the thing you said. It's like, this is a book that you feel like you're a better person after you've read it. And I think that's what we're all looking for when we read.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's true. I also think that like this book is such, I mean, obviously it's Josh's voice because he wrote it and it's nonfiction. I will say, like, if there are people who are listening who are like, I want to read Josh's books and I don't know where to start, when this book is out, like I would start with this book because I think that knowing how Josh talks makes those books a little bit more accessible. Not that his books are difficult to read by any means, but I think if you're hesitant to like jump into horror or you're hesitant to jump into Josh's backlog, hearing him talk through this book, I think hearing his voice and hearing how warm and kind and creative he is will make the reading experience for something like Incidents so much richer because you'll be like, how did someone that's this nice and kind write such a scary book? But I also think that it might just kind of help you to like hold your hand a little bit to know, hey, on the other side of this book is this really great like human being. And I've listened to his creative process now. So like I kind of get where he's coming from a little bit more.
I feel like that's so funny because when we recorded our very first episode, I said, like, how could Adam have been this obsessed with horror and yet be the kindest, nicest, sweetest? Like, the fact that you just said that, like, so
It's just part goes with the territory.
I guess so. And I feel like you could read this book when you need a pick-me-up day.
Yeah.
Just a couple of things of like, I could see quotes from him just, coming out as word art, or put him on as like a rotating like screensaver or something, just to keep encouraging you because it's so good. I just want to say I have adored having you on. I loved meeting you in StokerCon. I wish you lived closer. And I feel like I cannot wait to join your group and have the experiences. Just having you on, you're so knowledgeable. You have just such a great energy to you. And I think that anyone that's doing this, like, I need more of those book discussions in my life. So plan to see me.
Yeah.
And also, um, I hope that after this, you've put your heart and soul into it, that you go and have something with Fig Jam, since that is your happy place.
Thank you so much. No, thank you for having me on. This has been so much fun. I love
Yeah.
that you guys are doing this. I mean, I think it's a great idea, and I hope, and I know actually, that it'll expose some more people to the books that we love.
Yeah. So how do someone become part of
Yes.
Novel Nightmares? Where do we find you online? Anywhere else? Give us all the deets.
So you can find Novel Nightmares at all the social media handles, are just Novel Nightmares. There are links that will take you to the book club site, and you can find me at Amber K Reu, Reu, if you want book suggestions or anything outside of book club.